we transitioned out of. I left in 2000. Eric Schmidt, little known fact, who became chairman and CEO of Google, was my boss for 4 years at Novell. He was CEO of Novell.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you not? Eric Schmidt was here in Utah leading Novell for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then he landed pretty well at the next gig.
He did okay. There's some
Google
stories
recruited
around
him
that.
away as a startup, basically. And
Well,
was like,
not really. What happened was he was in Larry Sonsini's office, Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich. And
took us public. Yeah.
Right. Good old Larry. And so Larry was sitting in his office, and Schmidt was thinking about leaving Novell, and Sergey Brin walks by. And Larry Sonsini says, "Hey, Eric, I'd like to introduce you to somebody." So it was Eric Schmidt, who was chairman of our board, who introduced Eric to Sergey Brin.
Oh, wow.
And they came in, they had a discussion, and 6 months later, Eric was
over at Google.
CEO at Google.
Wow.
And then he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
40 billion times.
Yes.
Yeah, he has something like that.
That's insane.
Yeah, he did okay.
Yeah, he did okay.
I can't wait to hear so many more of your stories. Here we go. Welcome back to the Startup Ignition podcast. Thank you so much for watching the previous episode. We are so excited for this episode today. We go over everything from idea to exit in your startup journey, and we are hoping to bring amazing guests that will contribute and give you some awesome tips for your startup journey. You know us by now. We are your hosts, father and son duo, working together for what, 15 years now?
Yeah.
Maybe 12 years. 12 years now. But today we're excited to have a new guest, a new face on the podcast, someone that I'm super excited to talk to because I've known you for forever, and we just talked before we started rolling cameras. I've actually never really talked to you about startups and business and law and tech and what you've done in your career, so I'm excited to dive in. But today we have David Bradford.
The true OG of OGs.
Yes, like the guy in Utah we just barely came back from a golf outing, and David was like, I can actually film tomorrow. So we got him on the podcast last minute here, so we're super excited to have him.
Incredibly lucky.
Yeah, super lucky to have him. But I have a quick bio for you, David, before we get into the conversation.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so today we're honored to have David Bradford, one of the most iconic leaders in Utah, especially in Utah technology. You began your career as General Counsel at Novell. I don't know where you went before that, but I'm excited to talk to you before that.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I've read about him. You started in Hollywood, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
3 years
awesome.
in Hollywood. Yeah.
And for those, because our average listener and viewer is probably much younger, even probably younger than me, but for those who don't know Novell was a rocket ship back in the 90s that grew into billions in sales and was kind of the start of Utah technology, right?
Yeah, right.
And leading dozens of acquisitions and deals in the state.
Worldwide leader in personal computing networking. I mean, it invented networking.
Yeah. Then later, I'm not done with your bio yet. We're going to keep rolling here. I'm going through all of it. He later served as the CEO of Fusion.io, which you took public at a $1.2 billion valuation. It was solid state drives technology, hard drives, right?
Solid state memory devices, yeah.
And then you transferred over to CEO of HireVue,
right?
Which was a interview and video technology platform, basically, where you were, companies were utilizing it to do their candidate interviews online in a video atmosphere. And then now today you're doing Fluent Worlds. Has Fluent Worlds changed its name? Is it still known as Fluent Worlds?
We have two product lines, Fluent Worlds and now Quick Learn.
Quick Learn.
Which is an extension. Fluent Worlds is a language training app, but now using Quick Learn, you can go visit with one of 50 automated tutors, AI-driven tutors like Einstein, Cleopatra, Steve Young.
It's cool. I've been on it and seen it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and you can learn anything as opposed to just language training. So we kind of do language and everything.
So, and that's kind of like an immersive VR technology. Is that still kind of the premise of the whole platform?
Yeah, everything's contextual learning. So experiential learning. People that are engaged in a process, they learn better. Yeah. So I say engaged learning is better learning, deeper learning.
But we've only gotten into your your roles and titles and careers, but we haven't even gotten into your networking. So David is an amazing networker because of his extensive career. He has probably the best Rolodex in Utah, maybe even in the Western United States. Like, this guy is uber connected. You are also the author of Up Your Game. It's 6 Timeless Principles of Networking Your Way to the Top. Were you inducted to the Utah Hall of Fame as well? I saw that too.
Utah Technology
Hall of Fame.
Many years ago.
Yeah. And you are just the human connector of connectors, best networkers and mentors. And by the way, he was also an advisor to my startup and to the company that I sold. So David has just been around the block. So welcome, David. And we are so excited to have you.
Well, your words are super kind, and thank you. And I've watched both of your careers, and I've been amazed at what you've done, Tyler. And of course, I've known your dad for probably almost 3 decades, 2.5
25
decades.
years about,
Yeah.
Wow.
When you moved to Utah and had that great success up in the Seattle area. So they know what they're talking about. These guys know what they're talking about.
Thank you, David. That's awesome. That's huge coming from you. But so every episode of our podcast, every guest we bring on, we do a little icebreaker. Which is just, I'm going to spring something on you here. It's something you didn't know that was coming, and it's so fun to do. It's just to kick off the episode, get into the kind of the flow, get into the conversation. So 5 minutes, I'm going to do a quick icebreaker with you. Are you ready? Okay. And my dad's going to participate with you.
Got it.
What we are doing Utah Tech Era Trivia. Are you ready?
Whoa.
Yeah, here we go.
Could be tough.
Yeah, this is, I tried to make it tough because you guys are so knowledgeable. So I was like, at first AI gave me a little list of questions that was way too easy.
Oh my gosh.
And so I actually had to go in there and make it way harder because you guys would have gotten all of these questions within 2 seconds. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start off easy, and we're going to go back to the 1990s. Okay. You ready? Okay, so which company nearly held 50% of its global market share before Microsoft took over?
WordPerfect.
WordPerfect. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
That one was easy.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Okay. What Utah company was one of the fastest growing tech firms during the early 90s?
Certainly Novell.
Novell. Ding, ding, ding. Here we go. You
In
knew
fact,
that.
if you would have bought stock in any company in America in 1985, by 1992, you would have had your greatest rate of return on Novell, even higher than Microsoft.
Wow. Yeah. That's a cool fact.
Yeah.
It's interesting. People don't know that Novell was like the market leader.
And we had 65% share of the network operating system market.
And even long after its heyday, Novell continued to be a profitable, successful company because it was so entrenched. I mean, I remember stories of like the Department of Defense stuck with NetWare for decades because so many installations. How are they going to ship? The legacy software is so powerful, right? And they kept paying Novell. Paying Novell, right? Stuff like that. All these big companies because they were so hooked on NetWare.
Yeah. Later was a company called Micro Focus in the early 2000s. That kind of we transitioned out of. I left in 2000. Eric Schmidt, little known fact, who became chairman and CEO of Google, was my boss for 4 years at Novell. He was CEO of Novell.
Wow.
Did you not? Eric Schmidt was here in Utah leading Novell for 4 years. And then he landed pretty well at the next gig.
He did okay. There's some
Google
stories
recruited him
that.
away as a startup, basically. And
Well,
was like,
not really. What happened was he was in Larry Sonsini's office, Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich.
Who was took us public.
Right. Good old Larry. And so Larry was sitting in his office, and Schmidt was thinking about leaving Novell, and Sergey Brin walks by. And Larry Sonsini says, "Hey, Eric, I'd like to introduce you to somebody." So it was Eric Schmidt, who was chairman of our board, who introduced Eric to Sergey Brin.
Oh, wow.
And they came in, they had a discussion, and 6 months later, Eric was
over at
CEO at Google.
Wow.
And then he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
40 billion times.
Yes.
Yeah, he has something like that.
That's insane.
Yeah, he did okay.
Yeah, he did okay. Because Google is probably the greatest monopoly ever in a lot of ways, if you think about it, right? And I always thought, who's going to knock Google? Because every 20 years they get
AI now.
I know.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? I said,
Do you ever go Google anything anymore?
No,
I go into AI for
everything.
In 2 years, in like 2011, 2012, Microsoft launches Bing and spends $10 billion marketing it. $10 billion and gets 2% market share.
Yeah.
You know what I've been doing lately is I honestly just go to Google and I'll type in my question and then they have the AI answer. They have their little Gemini answer.
Good. Yeah.
So they've worked in their own AI. They've recognized
Well,
this.
now you know it's an option at top. You can start with that.
Yeah, so I just go AI mode every time, and instead of going even into ChatGPT, into the app or whatever, I just go straight to Google, so I'm not breaking the habit of just going to Google. And
they've got an innovator's dilemma, though. If they cut out those search results, they lose billions in revenue.
And that's a that's a $1 trillion issue.
They're literally having they're in one of Clayton Christensen's biggest innovators dilemmas ever, I think.
Yeah.
Don't you
think?
think?
Maybe the largest ever.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. But let me tell you about AIs coming back from Colorado from our trip.
From our trip.
I have not been to Huntington, Utah, and you don't even know where that is, since I was 5 years old. My grandmother and great-grandparents are from Huntington, Utah, years ago. So I'm driving back. I call my sister Patsy. What do you remember about it, et cetera? She says, well, I says, I'm thinking about swinging by there. And she says, oh, our grandparents are buried in the Huntington Cemetery. You should go check them out. And so I got to thinking, I said, but where are they buried? And so she says, let me look it up. Dave, she texts me back, I wasn't able to find where they're buried, et cetera, et cetera. I go into AI.
Yeah.
I says, my great-grandmother was Elizabeth Brazier Brockbank, died in 1962 in North Hollywood, California. She's buried in the Huntington, Utah cemetery. Where? Block B, lot, or
it knew the exact spot.
It knew the exact spot. I walked in. I says, so how do I find it when I get there? It comes back to me, says, are you going into the south gate or the north gate? I said, I'm going in the north gate. Oh, you walk in, you take the middle road and you walk up 6 rows and you'll be on lot 29.
How does it know that?
God.
How does it freaking know that? It was the most amazing thing.
I can't wait to hear so many more of your stories. Here we go. Okay, next one. This one's kind of hard. Are you ready? What portable storage device, not Fusion IOs, okay, created by Utah's Iomega, became a 1990s tech icon before
Iomega.
Before the USB flash drive killed it? Yes, Iomega, the zip drive.
Yeah.
Do you remember them?
Zip drive.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
We all had zip drives. That was a huge.
I had never heard of this.
In my industry, Yellow Pages, which had to store mass amounts of data and graphics, the zip drive became a very convenient way to take data from one device to another device.
Yeah, that was Roy, Utah. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember his name, the founder of that.
Yeah, me too. I knew
he's pretty legendary when he did it.
Right.
But I met him after that heyday. But yeah, he created a great thing.
Yeah, Iomega.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We're going into the 2000s. We're moving out of the 90s.
Oh, man.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Before being acquired by Adobe,
Omniture.
Omniture was founded in Utah under what original name?
MyComputer.com.
Dang.
The really original name is Superstats.
Oh, yeah. We had John Pastana on our podcast.
Is that what you said?
Here's the history.
But it is My Computer. That's the answer. But he did tell us it was actually
it was
Superstats.
from JP Interactive. And that's when Josh joined him. They were making websites, JP Interactive, then became Superstats when they came up with the analytics. And then Superstats turned into My Computer, and then My Computer became Omniture.
Right.
I was an early investor.
I've got to educate the listeners and viewers.
So
Go.
Yes, I was on that advisory board
you
as well
were? Yeah.
with John and Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
MyComputer.com days. And
Yeah, I have to educate the viewers and listeners because, again, they're not going to know a lot of these. But Omniture, was a huge $2 billion exit in Utah, kind of setting the scene for all of Silicon Slopes.
Actually, kind of almost one of the first truly SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And
you just ruined one of my questions.
Darn it. So
one of my questions
you're
was
dealing
who
with
was
guys that know stuff.
we're answering the questions before you even get to that.
I didn't even make them hard enough, man. I thought that Iomega one was going to stump you, but no.
That's standard. but it's just so fascinating about that. Omniture led the way on SaaS business before Salesforce did.
Yeah. Okay. So you got the My Computer company answer. Okay. What Utah company pioneered online retail and became famous for its phone number brand?
1-800-CONTACTS.
1-800-CONTACTS.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember 1-800-CONTACTS?
I do.
They
And
were
I met with
huge.
the CEO a couple of times. I don't think I was ever on their advisory board, but we did.
Do you know Steve Gibson?
I know Steve.
Yeah, he was one of
he
my
in
mentors.
Investors? Yeah.
He was the first one. He was a student at BYU. This is a great story. I'm going to tell real quick because it's a great Utah story.
Yeah.
Steve Gibson gives him $25,000 because he came to Stevenson as his teacher at BYU and said, hey, my wife's going crazy with all these contacts I have in my apartment. I got to maybe get an office where I can store them or something, but I don't have any money for it. I need some money. And he goes, okay, I'll give you $25,000 for this company. So he got a percentage of the company. And then 6 months later comes back and he goes, man, we're growing so fast. I need now to raise like $500,000. I got to buy the 1-800-CONTACTS phone number, phone number.
Oh, the phone number.
Which was expensive to go get from somebody, right? And so he's doing all this. And so he says, I need like $250,000 to $500,000. Steve Gibbs goes, well, no, I'm not going to give you that much. He goes, well, and then he went and found another investor. And the investor goes, well, if I invest, I want to buy out Steve Gibson. That's my contingency. So Steve Gibson generously said, okay, I'll sell out, but your company's worth a lot more. Steve made 8 times his money, got $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay. But at that sell then, if he would have kept it, $66 million.
Yeah. That's painful. That sounds like the original chief financial officer of Apple.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened there?
He sold out in the early days of Apple for, I don't know, 100 or 200K, which would have been $1 billion plus.
Yeah.
So
later.
insane.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And David's friends with Steve Wozniak.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Well, I want to hear it. Okay.
I expected that question.
What
small Utah company hired Steve Wozniak as their chief scientist?
Who was it?
The answer is Fusion IO.
Yeah, Fusion
Oh,
IO.
hey,
He
now.
came on
I
board
like
there.
that one.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to try to stump you here. What one Utah library automation system was
Dynex.
Come on now.
Okay, here's another one. What Park City-based company went public and became a lifestyle name across the whole world?
The cookie company.
Nope.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the ear.
Skull Candy.
Skull Candy. Yeah. Dang, you got it. It took you a second, though.
The cookie company, you're thinking not Crumble, but Mrs. Fields.
Yes, Mrs. Fields cookies.
Mrs. Fields was Park City?
Yes.
Carla Miney, who you know, was the right hand of Mrs. Fields.
Oh, wow.
Debbie
I didn't know
Fields.
that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that either.
It was Fields cookies.
Hey, this is
before
Utah. This is
Crumble and
Utah
all that.
Tech, not Utah
Back
cookies.
in the day when this was really something, she had her own jet plane, flew around. She was something. Mrs.
yeah.
Fields did the real deal with cookies, man.
Oh, she did.
Okay, here we go. Last one in the 2000s era. And actually, I'm going to cut this short because this is taking a long time because I want to get to you.
Well, I've given you the short answers.
I know. You're whip on them. Okay, here we go. What Utah-founded e-commerce company became known for its liquidation sales and was later one of the first major players to accept Bitcoin?
You know that. I'm not going to answer.
Yeah, you know this.
You want?
Okay, Utah-founded e-commerce company known for its liquidation sales, but also was one of the first major players to accept Bitcoin.
I'll wait till he lets me answer.
Okay, go, John. Your turn.
Overstock.
Oh,
Patrick
gosh.
Byrne. Patrick Byrne.
and Jonathan Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
They were huge, and they still are huge. Yeah.
Well, they did. Yeah.
and doing great sales. Okay, I'm gonna cut it. I have like 7 more questions.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm gonna move on because that
Your guests are getting bored by all of this.
I think it's cool. I think they're gonna be entertained. I'm entertained. Hopefully, you guys are all entertained watching this. I'm entertained.
Yeah.
Well, I just worry we dwell too much back in the day, but those are the enduring principles.
Everything we're doing today is built on a lot of those foundations. I mean, you and I are at the age where we live from going from literally paper and pencil
Yeah.
to,
Oh my
you remember when fax machines came in the late 80s? How that revolutionized. Remember we used to have to type up a letter, print out on a daisy wheel printer in the 80s, put an envelope and send it to somebody, wait for something to come back, and all of a sudden we could fax it in 1 minute.
I honestly don't understand how you guys did business.
Seriously.
No, I'm dead serious. Like the lag effect, the lagging of just communication.
No, but before faxes,
That's a
we
really
had to
good point.
write letters.
Yes.
Or the
Mail.
the telephone was really important.
Well, that's how I got my job at
Yeah.
Ersfeld and Younger. I sent out 40 letters, and I carbon copied them.
Yes.
Remember, John?
Carbon copy. You had to have a carbon in between paper, type it on a typewriter.
Type it on a typewriter. You had a piece of carbon paper in between. It made a duplicate while you were typing it, so I retained that.
Yeah, and remember the carbon companies that made carbon paper were so wealthy and successful, and all of a sudden Xerox comes in and makes a photocopier.
Yes.
That changed, wiped out that business.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And then Xerox comes in, and then Xerox gets wiped out by other stuff. I mean, it's just, that's business.
But okay, let's move on.
I will say the takeaway is that this state is entrepreneurial at its roots.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
There's a success orientation in this state that drives people in an extraordinary way.
A little fact, where we're sitting in Utah County, which is just south of Salt Lake County, has more startups per capita than any county in the United States.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah.
So, okay, last question that I thought was kind of cool. What city was first known as Silicon Slopes before like the whole Utah area was known as Silicon Slopes?
Are you talking about Lehigh?
They actually said, I researched this, it said that Provo.
I was going to say Provo.
Provo,
when Lehigh kind of...
because everybody thinks Lehigh because that's kind of the tech corridor.
Well, everybody thinks of Silicon Slopes. I think of that as a really recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, that was like 2010.
But Provo's probably where it was done. But also, and then when Lehigh kind of took over as the center of Utah's entrepreneurial landscape, Provo like to say, born in Provo, because almost everything that ends up in Lehigh and becomes a unicorn was born in Provo.
Right.
True.
And I should add, and John, you're aware of this, before Silicon Slopes, there was something called the Utah Technology Council.
Yeah.
And I would chair that and was a big part of that for years. Richard Nelson.
And that merged into it. They all merged into one.
They kind of merged into one. Right.
Yeah.
But...
Okay, so thank you for playing my icebreaker, but I'm cutting it off, okay? Because we're already 15 minutes in, and we could have probably done that for another 30 minutes. But I want to go way back. So he made a comment about you being a Hollywood something lawyer or attorney or in that scene.
Let's talk about where you grew up, and then you went to law school, and then your first job as a lawyer was in Hollywood. That's what I know.
Yeah. So
Start where you want to start.
1969, I graduated from Red Lodge High School in Red Lodge, Montana.
Oh, wow. Montana. Okay.
Yeah, 40 kids in my graduating class. But I will tell you, and I get emotional when I talk about it, because back in the day, this was just a little, nowheresville. And yet, it gave me the opportunity to learn leadership skills. So I became Sunday school president when I was 16 years old. I became the class president, the actor, and all the plays. And
because there was just so little people to hold those jobs. There was nobody
there, right? Exactly. And I was the star of the basketball team, et cetera. But that's, sometimes we kind of think of these faraway places, but it gave me my roots, my understanding, my leadership qualities, and so forth. So I'm forever grateful for Red Lodge. That was 69. Skip over to 1977. I graduated from the new BYU Law School. And I went off.
Were you in one of its first classes?
I was in its second class, actually. Second
J. Reuben
class.
Clark Law School.
J. Reuben Clark Law School. And the first class was 1976. I was class of 77. But my wife had grown up in Southern California, and I had actually been born in Burbank, California, before we moved to Montana. So my wife and I decided, well, we're going to find our fame and fortune back there in Southern California. And I joined a law firm down there in 1977 called Ersfeld & Younger. It was on Hollywood Boulevard, and I was there for 3 years. But then I wanted something more exciting in my life.
Was it doing entertainment law?
It did some, yes, it did some entertainment law. Litigation, I was more involved on the litigation side. But it just was slow moving. We had like 12 lawyers, and there was no growth, et cetera. I was looking for something a little sexier and funner. And I found a company in 1980 called Prime Computer. Yeah. So that's what gave my start
What was Prime Computer?
Prime Computer, okay, so this will take you way back, but in the 50s and 60s, the big thing was mainframe computing, Honeywell, IBM, et cetera. in the 70s, along came the super mini computers, which instead of costing several $1 million, they were more 250K to 500K.
Digital equipment.
Yeah.
Corporation.
DEC.
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
So DEC was our big competitor,
And IBM
John.
and DEC were competing, and Prime was competing.
In that super mini computer market. So I was their Western Regional Legal Counsel. In the interim, I got an MBA while I was at Prime Computer, so that gave me the business background, et cetera. Then I became General Counsel of Novell in 1985 and did that until 2000. But the nice thing about Eric Schmidt there is in the waning days of our work there, our last 4 years there, he gave me responsibilities for 4 different areas of the company, not just the traditional legal, but the corporate venture capital fund, business development,
the
government
M&A?
relations, M&A, all that stuff. So not only was I doing an M&A transactions, I was kind of running that group.
When you joined, was it Ray Norda, though?
It was Ray Norda from, that the history is 1985 to 1994. Ray Norda was my boss and CEO.
Right.
He is a true icon here in Utah.
Yep.
And then along came Bob Frankenberg for 18 months. That didn't work out quite so well, but Bob was a great guy, remains a dear friend. And then along came Eric Schmidt.
Okay.
And so those were the 3 CEOs that I worked for and learned so much from.
Ray Norda was literally he's legend in the history.
Oh my gosh.
And the story there is amazing because they went through like 6 presidents in 6 months, and Ray Norda was like the 6th president that got there, and he had $800,000 he brought to the company, fired everybody, and then brought back. Who were the 2?
Drew Major
and Kyle Powell.
Yeah.
And because he said, he fired everybody, said, now I'll rehire anybody working on something cool. And they said, well, we're working on this little thing to connect computers and network.
A little software,
Yeah,
right?
a little software.
There was a
That's
third
what we're going
guy.
to do with my $800,000, because they were trying to be a competitor at first to building IBM compatible computers.
Yeah. It was a hardware company.
And then they pivoted, like all companies do, pivoted to the winning business model, which was networking software.
Right, software.
And Ray Norda, then that was a rocket ship.
Right.
And then
It just
you
took
came
off.
in to be general counsel.
Yeah, we had about 150, 200 employees when I joined, and when I left, it was over 10,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's some growth.
What an experience.
So, okay. So you go from Prime Computer over to Novell, and then how long were you at Novell?
15 years.
15 years.
Long
That's a
time.
big chunk of your career.
A big chunk of my career, and I have a lot to owe to Novell and Ray Norda and my CEO friends there.
So give me the craziest thing what's the number one memory you have of Novell? That's 15 years summarized, I know, but what is like the thing that sticks out?
It was the Microsoft battles that began in late 91, early 92, when we bought a company out of Monterey, California called Digital Research Corporation.
Yep.
There was a guy named Gary Kildall who was really the father of the personal computer operating system. Bill Gates never wrote DOS.
No, he bought it from Patterson Labs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Seattle Computing Products
That's
at Patterson.
big Seattle history there.
Right, exactly. And what Patterson had done,
called it Seattle DOS.
Yes.
That was the first name.
And Patterson had actually copied Gary Kildall's stuff,
Really?
which was called CPM.
Yes.
But back in the days, it was like no copyright laws,
Wild
no
West.
patent. It was wild west.
Yeah.
And so Patterson took the first 40, 50 lines of code from Gary Kildall and created his DOS, Seattle DOS, which was also known as QDOS for Quick and Dirty Operating System.
Yes.
Literally quick and dirty operating system. And then Bill Gates came in.
Licensed it.
For $50,000.
Yep.
Which later became worth billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And there's a whole story there. The interesting thing is when we bought Kildall's company, Bill Gates was irate. He called Ray Norda and said, you got to get out of that deal. No, Ray said, listen, I've signed the contract. If you want to do a deal with us, go ahead. So Gates tried to buy us, and we actually had an offer from Gates and Microsoft to buy Novell for $10 billion.
By the way, just so the viewers and listeners know, this is one of the most legendary stories in the history of computing.
Yes.
So back on track.
There's so many aspects to it, but Kildall became a personal friend. Kildall was killed in a bar fight in 1994 in Monterey, California.
You're kidding.
I will let conspiracy theorists listening to the podcast figure out how he was killed in that bar fight. But
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's very suspicious.
well, and we were in litigation at that point with the Department of Justice and the DOJ regarding Microsoft's anti-competitive activities.
Oh my goodness.
So one of the things that
Listen, I want to make it clear. I'm not accusing anyone at Microsoft for having done that. It was just an accident, undoubtedly, that happened.
Yeah,
It was
just weird
Kildall.
timing.
Yeah.
So I want to bring up for our viewers and listeners, because this is good history, what was really important at the time was DR, Digital Research.
Yeah.
Their disk operating system was true multitasking, which Microsoft had not achieved.
Wow.
This is important. So I remember personally when it was MS-DOS 3.0 to 3.3 was very successful, and then 4 and 4.1. But then Digital Research announced their true multitasking, which was a complete revolution for computing. And Microsoft freaked out. They pre-announced, this is true, right?
Yeah.
They pre-announced their version 5.0 to kill DR. Because they said, all you computer manufacturers, don't go with Digital Research. We're going to do multitasking in our 5.0. They hadn't even achieved it yet.
And in
is that
fact,
true? They
yes.
pre-announced it.
Yeah.
And that made
The
all the
pre-announcements,
personal computer manufacturers scared to do business with Digital Research.
And let me add
that right?
one.
Is that right?
Absolutely right. And
Yeah.
let me add to it, John. You have a great memory on that. But they actually had signed a contract with those OEMs like Dell and others.
Who had?
Microsoft had signed a contract already with Dell and others that said, you're going to owe us a royalty for every machine you ship, whether or not you ship MS-DOS.
Oh, so they had to pay for MS-DOS whether they used it or not.
And that became a contract in restraint of trade, which blocked Novell DOS, DR DOS, now Novell DOS, from ever penetrating that market.
Yeah.
Ray Norda flew down, had a meeting with Michael Dell, with John Edwards, our Senior Vice President of Sales. And when they walked out of the meeting, Michael said, well, you're going to, yes, you have a far better product, multitasking, disk compression, data, et cetera.
Okay.
And he said, but I can't buy it from you because I've signed a contract with Microsoft.
Just that one contract changed history.
Changed history. It was Dell.
Why did Dell sign that?
HP, I'm sure it was HP.
Yes, HP.
Why
was
did they,
Dell.
why did they
and,
sign that exclusivity contract
There was
like
a
that?
company in Germany that signed that exclusivity
There's so many.
contract.
The IBM PC compatible industry was gargantuan, dwarfed Apple. Apple had like 3% market share.
Yeah. Apple was a joke.
IBM's had
back in the day.
97%. Apple was only in the education world basically, and then Microsoft had these contracts. And I'm from Seattle, and this was big news in Seattle too. I mean, we knew what was going on, and as a user, I was in the LPG industry. It needed a lot of computing power. So like when you were saying, and this is something I wanted to share with the audience because this is history they don't know. When you had the big VAX mainframe computers, right?
Yeah.
When they came out with those, what they called mini computers, they were mini compared to the super big computers, right?
Yes.
And that's what you were talking about with digital equipment and what you worked in. And
They were called super minis.
Prime was big in the PIC world too, by the way.
Yes.
We ran the PIC operating system. Yeah.
John's got a lot of knowledge, folks. Very
But what
impressive.
happened was when microcomputers, personal computers that we all know today, this right here is a microcomputer. So you have mainframes, mini computers, and microcomputers. And microcomputers took the world by storm. And that's the world you had a big part in.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting history.
Yeah. So much more to say. But.
So that was all stemmed from my question of what's your number one memory of Novell. But
he was the general counsel. So he was leading in
all the
this
charge against
litigation.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those stories are the ones that you remember.
Yes.
What is the person that also took up this a little bit? And I think he just passed away. That was really leading against Microsoft and doing stuff too. Oh gosh, what was his name here in Utah? He open source software. He was behind in different things. Oh, I can't remember his name.
And were they affiliated with the
They might
Canopy
have been,
Group?
maybe Canopy or Novell and all that. I can't remember anyway.
Okay.
But he had to get bodyguards at one point. He felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
That's so crazy. But those stick out just because of how intense and how, head to head and how game changing of the whole computing industry was that line. It was at stake.
And listen, people don't realize the 4 largest software companies in the world in the 90s, early 90s, were Novell, WordPerfect right here within 5 minutes of where we're physically located.
Yeah.
Lotus in Boston and Microsoft.
Yes, incredible, Pat. But amazing. WordPerfect, an incredible software product.
Oh my gosh.
It was way better than Word, and I'll say that out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved WordPerfect. And then Microsoft Business Tactics, whether right or wrong, I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but they just crushed WordPerfect and then ultimately Novell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's get a little more current.
So beyond Novell,
Yes.
you go to where after that? After the whole Novell heyday ends up, you're 15 years, where do you go? What do you
I'm
do?
on the early advisory board for mycomputer.com, and I'm mostly doing advisory board gigs. And I take an advisory board gig with a company called Fusion.io up in Salt Lake. I was very impressed with this.
This is right as I was
game-changing-
meeting David when we moved here.
Early
solid state.
2000s?
Yeah, kind of mid 2000s, et cetera. And so I'm on their advisory board, and there's some dissatisfaction, we'll say, with the CEO who had been brought in by the venture capital fund. And I was chair of the advisory board. I brought Wozniak onto my advisory board, and so they just moved me in as CEO.
Wow.
And that was a great run.
Wow. So what's your memories from the Fusion.io days? Because I mean, that was pretty like innovative as well, right? The solid state drive, that was whole new technology that you guys did huge partnerships, getting into these microcomputers you talk about. Didn't you own a lot of that landscape? I remember Facebook was a massive client of you guys.
Didn't Facebook do like $100 million purchase or something?
$100 million, and Apple did $100 million. But when I came in as CEO, the company had done $1 million in this previous year.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So it helped bringing Wozniak on board, just giving name recognition. Within 6 months of bringing Woz on board, Business Week named us the most innovative company in America.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
So that was pretty cool. And then eventually we went public in June of 2011, and I left, et cetera. And over time, a lot of the other senior managers that I brought in left. And it got sold eventually to Western Digital is where
Western Digital bought it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was an interim step, but Western Digital wound up with the Fusion.io technology.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And I mean, did they make a good run with it? Did they flip it, or they kept it, or
Listen, you
don't know anything that went internally there? You weren't on board in the Western Digital days.
Is it still Seagate and Western Digital, or just the big kahunas in the hard drive space?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's still those two.
Yeah.
And Western Digital's huge, and Seagate's huge. Yeah.
So what was any cool memory or awesome experience within the Fusion.io experience?
Well, I'm just saying, when I went to Idaho to speak at a conference, I sat in the front row. Here's a lesson for all you entrepreneurs. I sat in the front row. I gave up a golf game, and you guys know how much I love golf.
Yeah.
I gave up a golf game to hear Wozniak speak.
Yeah.
Because I'd heard of him, and I'd met Jobs back in the day.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story.
How did you meet Steve Jobs?
Well, Novell was going to merge with his company, Next.
Oh, Next Computer. That's what he did when he got when they brought in Scully to replace him at a huge mistake at Apple. He went and created Next, and then Apple turned around and had to buy Next back.
Right. But before Apple bought Next back, he was going to merge with Novell.
Really?
Right.
I
and
didn't
so
know
that's
that.
why I was over in the Silicon Valley with Ray Nordham meeting with Jobs.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah.
my.
So that was really
Why did
interesting.
that deal fall through? Because Apple was a higher bidder?
Well, no. Apple came in maybe a year later. The problem there is Steve believed at the time, Jobs, in his hardware. His hardware computing platform.
Yeah.
And we'd gotten out of hardware years earlier.
Yeah.
All we cared about was his software.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the deal just didn't make
Match
sense.
up, yeah.
Didn't match up
Yeah.
at the time.
Okay, so back to Wozniak.
Yeah.
Back to Wozniak.
Idaho.
So I go to Idaho. I'm speaking. I see on the billing of the speakers, Woz is going to give the keynote speech at lunch. So I give up my golf match. And another thing that I'll tell your listeners is the smallest things in life can make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Because had I not given up that golf match that day, I would have never met Wozniak. But I went in. I sat in the front row. I said, hey, if I'm going to listen to this guy, I'm going to sit in the front row. Sat in the front row. Next to me, And there's probably 100 people in that front row. Next to me happened to be Steve Wozniak.
You saw sat right by, his assistant.
His assistant.
Oh.
And we started to talk, and I told her a little bit about my tech background and whatnot. She says, oh, would you mind meeting afterwards with Steve? He would love to hear your story, and you two would get along great. Oh. That you got to show up in life.
But bottom
That's
line
the
is,
other lesson. You show
Tyler
up.
likes to say, because a lot of people call Tyler lucky.
Yeah.
He says, hey, preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're right. And you have to make, like, he goes, why do I get the balls thrown? I don't tell him Tyler's story, but he says, why do I get the balls thrown to me at the Jazz game? Because I'm jumping up like a crazy guy.
Yeah.
And they throw it to him. Yeah. And you have to be there. So, Sarah,
be there.
do you believe this, that half a success is just putting yourselves in situations where luck can happen to you?
Or opportunity to
Yeah,
fall
they
in your
say
lap.
90% of success in life is just showing up.
Yeah.
And it's not 90%, but it's certainly important to show up. And I showed up in Idaho. There's a whole story behind that.
So did you become good friends with Steve?
Sure.
So you guys hit it off in that meeting?
We hit it off in that meeting after he gave his speech. I gave him my card. Going back, I drive. It's an 8-hour drive from wherever, Sun Valley, back to Provo. So now I'm on the drive back, and I'm just thinking, man, I'd love to get that guy involved in Fusion.io. And by the time I'd gotten back, I crafted an email to Steve, and I said, hey, it was great meeting you. Would love to have you on our advisory board for Fusion.io. He writes me back within 24 hours and said, I'd be honored to be on your advisory board.
Wow.
Awesome.
Little did I know that Woz knew a guy named Sean Nunley, who was one of our early developers at Novell. He calls up Sean. He says, what about this Bradford guy? Is he legit? And fortunately, Sean and I were good friends, and Sean gave me a high recommendation. And so when I came back to Woz with that invitation to join our advisory board, he immediately accepted.
And that's
awesome.
And that's a crucial element to the history and story and success of Fusion.io.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so give the viewers and listeners a quick snapshot of Fusion.io. Like what? So you took it public, right, to the size and the capacity and the deal making and where it got to, like the achievement of Fusion.io.
I think my biggest accomplishment there was bringing in a S1 ready management team.
Yes.
I hired Jim Dawson to be my chief sales officer. I hired Dennis Wolf out of Silicon Valley to be my chief financial officer. And so I brought together this great team of people. And so when we had the success with Apple and the success with Facebook and we were ready to go public, I had the team.
This is how I view you, David, is that, Utah's got all this percolating entrepreneurial activity. And when one rises up and says, okay, this something going somewhere, like your history, you looked at, you helped Novell get to where it was. You then did Fusion.io, and now we're going to hear about the next one too, HireVue, right? And I, very early before you got involved, was with Mark Newman.
Oh, yeah.
And just, we went to Barrios for lunch one day when he was just starting the company and telling me what he was doing. And then you got a hold of that one and took it to the next level. You're just super good at taking companies where the founders have gotten to a certain level and you take it to the next stage.
So is
that a good way of saying it?
I think so, John. That's a good way. Oftentimes I'm not the guy who started the company. I come in after because I have some management skills and I have ability to recruit really great people.
What do you attribute that to? Give everybody listening and watching right now, what is the one piece of advice you'd say, okay, here's how I've been able to be that guy?
Be curious.
Yeah.
It's the C word. To me, it's just being curious. Legitimately, like you guys are doing now, you're curious about my background.
Yeah.
And so when curiosity starts and you begin to have that conversation, what happens? Trust forms.
Yes.
And when trust exists, everything else accelerates.
Yeah.
So find people, surround yourself, be curious, ask lots of questions. That's what I did to Wozniak.
Yeah.
Just tell me about it,
Yeah, be interested in care.
Be interested in care.
But it's not done in a phony way. You're very sincere. You are curious. You're totally curious. I think David's whip smart. I think David's super connected from the career he built up. And then he's also sees how to take it from $1 million revenue to $100 million.
But I think that advice, that is the underlying foundation of your network.
Yeah.
The reason why you've been able to be so connected and network and be such a friend to everybody is because you're genuinely curious about them and make them feel important and needed and wanted. And that's a really, really good piece of advice to say, okay, want to know how to build a network? It's about being curious. It's really cool.
Paul Toscano, when I got to BYU in 1969.
Who's Paul Toscano?
Paul Toscano was our dorm head.
Okay.
Right?
Not Steve Wozniak. Now we're going to Paul Toscano.
No, this is Paul Toscano. And wonderful guy. Great memories of Paul. But there we became close our freshman year, et cetera. Probably 15 years later, I'd had some modicum of success. I'd moved back to Utah. I wanted to find Paul again. So I'm up in Salt Lake City one day, and I looked up his address, and he was a bankruptcy lawyer. And so I just barged in on him one day, just completely surprised him after maybe 15 or 20 years of not seeing Paul. And he said to me, he says, David, congratulations on all of your success, et cetera, et cetera. I knew you would be successful. And I looked at him and I said, Paul, why would you say that? How would you know this kid from Red Lodge, Montana was going to have any kind of success? And he looked at me and he said, David, you were the most curious person in the dorms.
Yeah.
You were just asking questions. And so I've always
getting to
used
know
that.
everybody.
Yeah, getting to know everybody and just curious about, and I don't know, maybe it came from my mom, Kay, who was curious and was just a networker, a natural networker. So.
I'm gonna tell a couple stories of David when I first met him. Can I do that, Tyler?
Yeah, go for it.
So like
We do need to get to HireVue.
We
though.
are.
I'm not skipping over HireVue.
Okay, we're not skipping over, but that's a good moment to tell it just because it's part of this networking and David's impact.
Yeah.
I moved to Utah. You know that. You were 14 when we moved here.
I am his son.
And then
Yes,
we
I knew
moved
that.
into the neighborhood of David. And so I
Yes.
meet David at church. And I meet him, and literally David threw around a lot of names. And I go, this guy knows everybody. Either he's full of baloney or he really knows everybody. And then I go along, and in the next few months after meeting you, the first, didn't know you in a personal church neighborhood way, then in business stuff, and I'm realizing, no, he actually knows all these people. and I said, he is like the most connected person I've ever met. And then I remember, I don't know if you remember my first, I came down to help at BYU, the entrepreneurship program. Okay.
Yes.
So I held a big conference for venture capital at BYU. And you might not remember this, my first few months. And I held this big conference, and I invited 10 VCs, and you were the 11th to be on a big panel, sitting at a big table. And there were a ton of people. I put it together. And all 11 of you were there, and everybody introduced themselves down the thing, and you were in the 11th spot over here next to me. Okay. And so they went down this way. Every one of the 10 attributed a huge reason why they're in the venture capital industry and do what they're doing is because of David Bradford. They literally all said that going down like this. And then I go, okay,
that can't be
He's not
true.
only the real deal. This is like the most connected person ever.
Yeah.
And then I just read some articles today, just prepping for today a little bit, just to make sure I'm up to speed on you. And that's what everybody that's ever interviewed goes, this is the most networked person I've ever met. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's incredible.
Thank you, John. That's very kind of you.
And that's because of what you've kind of given us tips and tricks today of how you've achieved that, which is good for all of us. And this is really important too. I just want to the viewers and listeners, the Gen Z and all millennials, they need to get away from their screens a little bit more. They need to not play so much video games and pretend to be entrepreneurs and to kind of do that stuff. They need to get out and talk and meet with humans and be real people.
Right.
Do you agree with that statement? I mean,
absolutely.
it's just because you couldn't achieve that if you weren't talking to humans all the time, right? I mean, and if we stay insular, we don't network the same way.
Yeah, like Steve Blank says, get out of the building, not only for validation, but also to just push your startup forward.
You can't
Steve Blank is
validate
like the father of lean startup, and he always says, to actually validate a business and actually get a good idea and make sure that it is a good idea, you need to be out of the building and be talking to the market, talking to the customers. So if you stay behind a desk and, design a logo and pick your company colors, like you're not doing anything. You need to get out of the building. It's the same thing in building and pushing, scaling business, growing business. Get out of the building, build network, talk to people.
You can't build a S1 ready team, as you said, which S1 is the first filing for going public.
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's what that means for our listeners.
Right.
But an S1 ready team, you can't build that unless you've got the network.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're out of Novell. We have transitioned to Fusion.io. You've taken the company public. You did deals with Facebook. You got Steve on the advisory board. Not to mention everything you did at Novell with the Microsoft days and Bill Gates and all that. Now we're to HireVue. What's the transition from Fusion.io to HireVue? Take me there.
So it was, I left Fusion.io when we went public and I retired, right? for the third time.
Yeah, I was going to say, for real this time?
Yeah. Well, I was hoping it was for real, and played a lot of golf that summer. And
Tell Tyler you made a run at one point to go on the senior PGA, didn't you?
Yeah. This was early 2000s.
Well, I know you just shot yesterday, what, 2 over?
Yeah, well,
3
it was
over?
a little higher than that, but it was in
Really
the
good.
70s,
Yeah.
let's just say. And probably shot my age. I'm 70. I'll be 75 here shortly.
Wow.
Dave, when he plays golf, he creamed me. I had a match against him one time. He actually Dave, from 150 yards out, puts it within 10 feet of the cup on every shot.
Yeah.
Well, I developed some skills, but what was the question? Oh, it was the HireVue.
Yeah,
the
going to
transition.
HireVue.
So I was playing some golf that summer, and here we go. And now it's November, right, or October. I get a call from this recruiter. Goes, hey, HireVue needs a CEO. And Mark Newman, as John knows, is the founder, along with Ryan Money.
Yep.
And so long story short, I didn't have a lot to do that winter because it snows heavy here. And so I wasn't playing any more golf.
I think I'll be a CEO of a company. Okay.
Well, that's what kind of happened. And so I can remember the first day was early November of 2011. And I went to their offices. It was up in South Jordan. And I'm sitting at my desk, and they had a big rainstorm that day, and the roof caves in on me.
What?
Into my office.
Wow.
I'm sitting at my desk, and this roof suddenly got water soaked and came. So it was not expensive digs. Let's just put it that way.
Startup for real. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think they'd done $1 million in their previous year, and 4 years later, I think we were doing $37 million, I want to say, and it had taken off. So,
and it was technology to help in HR for recruiting and interviewing.
digital
and all
interviewing.
That.
At the time,
At the early days.
Yeah, the time there was probably 10 or 15 people that had this similar idea, doing videos and then submitting them online. If Tyler wanted a job and he wanted to go to work for IBM, IBM could send him a little link from HireVue.
Yeah.
You'd do a quick little interview online. They'd ask you 5 or 6 questions. You'd respond in real time to those. We'd get that back, give it to IBM, and give them a list of, the top 10 candidates or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, but there were 10 or 15 at the time that were in that space. But we got venture capital out of Sequoia Capital, among others, out of Silicon
You
Valley.
raised from Sequoia.
Yeah, we raised from Sequoia.
How big was that round that you raised with them?
I want to say
you were there at the time. 20 million-ish?
15, 20. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
But it was sufficient. And that's another tip for your entrepreneurs.
But you took it. Oh, sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. Finish this thought, and then I have a question.
Okay. So the key there is you got to have 4 things to start a really great company. And one of them is people. I say that 60% of the success of any company is in its people. So surround yourself with great people. But another aspect of that, one of the 4 pillars, is capital. You need money. You can have the greatest product in the world, but if you don't have money to forget it. You're going to be left behind. And HireVue was one of 15 companies that had a digital interviewing platform. And I don't think ours was any better or any worse than anybody else's out there. But we got capital. And once we had that capital, we could begin the sales and marketing. And that thing took off like a rocket ship. So maybe not like Fusion.io.
What's the other 2 pillars?
You got the timing has to be right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You have to have timing has to be right, and you have to have truly a great product.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So the 4 in summary are, because I like this tip, I like where you're going with this, are timing has to be right. You have to have capital. You have to have team. And what was the 4th one?
Innovation.
Innovation product.
Right.
Good
Product.
product.
Right.
Yeah. No, that checks. That completely checks.
And it's super important for our viewers and listeners to understand this, because what you say on timing is really important, because you can catch a wave early or late and get crushed. And it's timing is very important. And sometimes society has to adapt. Like in 2010, I knew a company here in Utah that had an incredible facial recognition technology and tested it at a Novell conference.
Yes.
And it went well. And guess what? But the people that were tracking whether they attended a class at the conference.
Yes.
And people got bugged and felt weirded out because they were being tracked with their face. That was in 2010, so that was unacceptable. But now we walk by Delta and let them facial recognize us walking onto a plane.
Yeah, it's more accepted.
So they were 15 years too early.
Right. And the metaverse was much the same way. We got early into the metaverse with one of my companies.
Yeah.
And it didn't take off.
Yeah.
Why? Because people were a little freaked out by the metaverse, the characters, the avatars.
Timing's important.
Timing's really important.
Yeah.
So I want to bring one thing out that it's kind of a trend I'm recognizing throughout all of these stories, which are you're taking these products that are good products, right? But like you just said with HireVue, it was nothing special. But you bring David Bradford in here and everything you've cultivated over your career, and look at what you're able to accomplish. They were doing $1 million. Now the next year they're doing 30.
Well,
so it's like
it took 4 years or so.
I know, but still, it's just like it's not like I'm trying to highlight this for everybody listening that like look like it is about how much the effort and the resources that you bring to the table. It's not so much about like, hey, there's just this strike of lightning and luck happens. Like you've been able to repeat this over and over and over in your career, taking companies to these new heights. And it's just like, look, there is a recipe for success
formula,
here. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You know
There's
what I
even
mean?
more to it, Tyler, than that. So Mark Newman and Ryan Money were the ones to get it to $1 million revenue.
Right.
And I'm not going to say this, but that might have been hard for you to do for where you are in your career, because that's a grind that you were past in your career.
Right.
They did the grind to get it to $1 million, and that's hard. So that's where the listeners and viewers of this podcast are at. Get it to $1 million. One of the mistakes those guys will make is saying, "Oh, I can take it to 10 million or 20 million." Most can't, and they don't recognize they need a David Bradford.
Yeah.
And that's why that worked out well for them. If they would have stayed in that seat,
but I'm also,
who knows what would have happened?
and credit Mark Newman at the time. I remember meeting with him. He says, "You know what? I met with my recruiter, and he doesn't think I'm the guy to take it to the next level, but you can, and so forth." And so he was willing to admit. That's the beauty of Mark. He was willing to admit at the time, I can't do it.
That's an incredible skill set that a founder needs to have. One of my best investments ever, the founding CTO one day came to his CEO partner and said, "This has outgrown me. We need a better CEO." And they had to hire a CEO that was more competent than even that founding CTO. But because that founding CTO had the humility to do that, he became a gazillionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
But
because he had stock, he kept his stock.
Yeah, of course. I think that this is what these viewers and listeners, what everybody's listening to today through David Bradford's story is like, you can be the David Bradford, right? Like it is possible to cultivate the kind of resources, the network, and the everything that attributes to success in a career. Like you can be that. It is achievable. That's what I'm trying to say is like, you don't necessarily need to be the 0 to 1 guy, or it's great that you are the 0 to 1 guy, but you can also be that guy. Start now, caring about people, showing interest, building network, because I think a lot of your stories like HireVue, you came into HireVue, you connected them to capital. You knew the people to bring the capital to the table.
Who's been on our podcast that literally told us he figured out he was not the guy 0 to $1 million. He was way better at taking it from 1 to 20. Who was that?
Adam Edmonds?
Adam Edmonds. Adam Edmonds just took Entrada from 1 to 4 billion
and
after David Bateman.
By the way,
left.
I think he just
David Bateman, by the way, is back in Utah, but I'm just saying it's crazy. Adam Edmonds, and I was his first investor in his first company, and he said he just discovered along the way that he's not the best startup guy, but he's really good operational.
Right.
Yeah, so fair. I'm just saying, so yeah, you can be the 0 to 1 guy, but you can also be the 1 to 30 million guy. Like you can be that. So
all right, we pontificated now.
Yeah,
back to David.
Yeah, back to David. We cut you off on your HireVue journey. One thing
How did that end? I didn't hear the ending.
Well, he was talking about how you brought Sequoia to the table, because we cut you off when you started giving the tip of like, you do need capital to make a company go and to grow a product.
Right. I would say I anticipate your next question, but it all relates to people.
Yeah.
So who was a great interviewer back in the day? Larry King.
Of
course.
CNN icon, had interviewed multiple U.S. presidents. The president of Russia was a personal friend. Carlos Slim, the richest man in the world at the time, was his best friend, etc. And so I brought Larry King onto the HireVue advisory board.
Can I share?
I did not know that.
Next door neighbor.
As it turns out. It helped. Larry wasn't up here a lot.
He wasn't up here a lot, but he has a house next door to you.
Yes. And
we saw him walk in the neighborhood every once in a while.
Yeah, good old Larry. and God bless him. He passed away about 3 years ago.
I didn't know he got on your advisory board.
Yeah, he's on my advisory board. So the point I'm trying to make is, again, surround yourself with great people. Yeah, you're the average, you've heard this many times, of the 5 people with whom you surround yourself.
Yeah.
John's always surrounded himself with great people. Now you're one of those great people.
And Tyler got you on his advisory board, and he had a great outcome.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't think that advisory boards mean much, especially in the early stages, but honestly, it does. Even just bringing Larry or Steve
social
or
credibility
these
is
people
important.
to the table
in the venture ecosystem.
Do you think that's a huge reason why you've been able to bring VC to a lot of the companies that you've been involved with? Is because the advisory board and people that you brought to the table? Is that one of the main factors?
I mean, had I not brought Jim Dawson on board as our chief sales officer at Fusion.io, I would have never gotten capital out of NEA.
Yeah.
So NEA was an early investor in us in Fusion.io.
NEA is who?
Big Silicon, New Enterprise Partners was the name of the firm out of Silicon Valley. Yeah. Scott Sandell was one of the top, VCs in the world.
Yep.
And NEA clearly was one of the top.
David Cavorts with the tier 1 VC.
This is
like, we're sitting at the feet of legend.
So how did HireVue end up then? And
well, I just, Mark,
were you truly only there for a winter?
No. 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years.
And then I said, Mark, this is now your baby.
Yeah.
Go get it. We built it. We got the capital. Take it to the next level. And he stayed for another couple of years, and then he brought in another CEO.
Okay.
And he did a great job with it, et cetera. And I think the last sale of that company was, I want to say $500 million, but it may be higher than that today.
Wow, fantastic.
By the way, Fusion.io eventually got to a $3.6 billion market cap.
Wow. Yeah. I remember it being over $2 billion for sure. Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, so now take us to today. I know that HireVue, what that was in the 2010s, right? That kind of era.
That was 2011 and 2015.
Yeah. So now you've been working on Fluent Worlds and all this education technology.
Yeah.
So speed us up to today. What are you doing today?
Well, there's a lot, but my wife, Dr. Linda Bradford's a PhD in instructional technology, and she had the vision way back in 2010, 2012 to use video gaming technology for something good. And so that's our mission today, is we want everybody in the world to have access to the greatest minds in history using metaverse technology, gaming technology, AI-driven technology now. I got all over AI about 3 years ago when it really became commercialized. So we're using AI and those sorts of things, video gaming technology, to elevate the lives of people around the world.
Yeah. So, and that's what you're focusing on. That's your 9 to 5.
That's my 9 to 5, but I still sit on a bunch of advisory boards. When I see stuff that looks really interesting to me, then I'll join the advisory board. And to your point, I mean, I got a wonderful check from Omniture. I got a wonderful check from your company just for being on the advisory board and taking a little early stock.
Yeah, of course. No, that's a great play. And but kudos to you for accomplishing that kind of status, right? Where people just want, you are how you brought Steve in, you brought others to your advisory board. Now you are that for the next generation of entrepreneurs, right? Where you're bringing name recognition and hype and awesome
Be careful,
things.
You're going to start getting a lot of requests now.
I know. We better temper that back a little bit. But okay, so I want to end this podcast because we are almost at the hour mark. It's already been an hour, which is crazy. But to summarize everything up, like, what is your overall advice to the budding entrepreneur and the budding businessman and if you could go back to your, university days when you went to the BYU Law School, what are you telling yourself? Like,
the reason for my success is I'm a doer.
Yeah.
I don't just dream about something. And so there's a famous line that I use all the time is the world needs dreamers and the world needs doers.
Yeah.
But most of all, the world needs dreamers that do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're two different people.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So I'm a doer. My wife's a dreamer. And that's why we've built wonderful Fluent Worlds and wonderful Quick Learn, these amazing technologies. Now, one of the guys that was on my advisory board in the early days of Quick Learn / Fluent Worlds was Nolan Bushnell. He was the founder of video gaming technology.
Yeah.
Grew up in Clearfield, Utah, started Atari.
Atari, right?
Nolan Bushnell, amazing dude. He once wrote a book called Finding the Next Steve Jobs. because Nolan gave Steve Jobs his first job.
Yes.
And so Nolan Bushnell wrote this book called Finding the Next Steve Jobs. In it, he writes this. He says that everybody who's ever taken a shower has had a great idea.
Yeah.
It's the person that towels off, gets out of the shower, and does something about it.
Yeah.
That changes the world. And so what I'm saying is form those articles of incorporation. Do.
Yeah.
Bring in other people. Surround yourself with great people. But unless you're doing it and not just dreaming it, it's never going to go anywhere. So be a doer.
I love that advice.
Yeah, very good.
So give me one memory of when you did that. When you said, okay, I'm actually going to take this chance, take this leap, do this thing. And that just comes to mind. First thing that pops into your head.
Well, John mentions, I've had a personal friend from a number of years, NFL Hall of Famer Steve Young.
Yes.
And so when I was trying to hire a chief revenue officer at Fusion.io, I knew the guy I had to have. His name was Jim Dawson. I mentioned him a couple of times today. And so I was in Silicon Valley. I ran by Steve's house. I said, just sign this football for me and have it say to Jim Dawson. Join Fusion.io. Steve signs his football. I FedEx it to Jim Dawson's house. I get a call a day later from Jim Dawson. He says, Dave, I don't know what you did or how you did it or how you got Steve to sign this, but when my wife saw that football show up on our doorstep signed by Steve Young, she said, you go follow that guy, whoever sent that to you. And so Dawson accepted the job.
Oh, wow.
And became a great chief revenue officer and drove the company to over 100
it's
million.
little things like that make the huge difference.
Right.
Like look how crucial Jim was to the
Oh, he
whole
was
story of Fusion.io.
Essential.
And look at what captured him. A
Right.
Steve Ball signed football.
Right.
That's insane. That
Right.
is a great story. Okay, let's wrap it up. Well, okay, David, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for such short notice and being so generous with your schedule, because we know you're such a busy guy and doing so many big things. But I don't know. I think we can summarize David's story. It's people, it's network, it's caring, it's curiosity, it's, I don't know, so many tips that you can learn from this podcast and from David's journey. So thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, we are signing out. And thank you. Keep building. And as David says, keep doing. Just get off your butt and go do something. Right, David?
Right.
That is the tip for today. So thank you for watching. This is the Startup Ignition podcast, but we are out. Thank you.